Hi, I'm Kate Knight, and this is my theater research presentation on English Renaissance theater. And the country of origin is England. A brief overview is that English Renaissance theater was written after the Puritan Revolution in between the Reformation and the theaters in 1642. This time period of theater includes the well-known works of the playwright William Shakespeare. This type of theater evolved from medieval theater traditions like mystery plays that were parts of religious festivals in England as well as other parts of Europe during the Middle Ages. Some background is during the English Renaissance theater, companies and players belonged to certain houses of noblemen, and they performed in different locations periodically before the reign of Elizabeth I. The tours of players eventually replaced the earlier mystery and morality plays by local players. In 1572, a law was passed that got rid of the companies that didn't have formal patronage and were named vagabonds. Towards the end of this period, the economic and drama parts of this type of theater were dramatically changed. While Queen Elizabeth was ruling, the plays were available equally to people of all different social classes. Once private theaters were created, the theater was more geared towards the society's upper class members and their values and tastes. Some background continued is when large and profitable public theaters were created, it helped English Renaissance drama plays to become more popular. This was because that instead of the plays being transitory, they became more fixed and permanent. An example of one of these theaters is the theater that was built in 1576 by James Burbage in Shoreditch. Public theaters were generally built around an empty space and reached a height of 3 stories tall. Timber, lath, plaster, and thatched roofs made up the theaters. The prices of tickets at the public theaters were generally 5 to 6 times greater than those of the tickets at the public theaters. And so these are just some pictures of the stage. So they're built out of like wood and timber, and they're about 3 stories high, and this is the open stage where it is performed, and the audience members sit around it in one of the 3 levels of the audience member seats. Performances and costumes. The plays ran on a repertory system, meaning that they ran for about 1 to 2 days, opposed to the traditional Western plays that we have nowadays that run for months on end. The performances only had males participating, so for the female parts, adolescent males had to dress in female costumes to portray these parts. English Renaissance theater did not have a lot of eccentric scenery or props, so they used costumes to draw the audience's attention. The costumes were typically modern clothes because of the costume's expense regardless of the time period that the play was set in. So costumes continue. These are just some pictures of typical costumes that you would see during the English Renaissance theater time period. And here are some pictures of the costumes that they might potentially wear. And even though there's women in these pictures, women were not in the plays. And here, this is a picture of some people bringing Queen Elizabeth in to see a play. And I added this picture in because it showed you what some of the modern clothes were that they were wearing at the time, that they would wear during their plays if they weren't dressing up during what the people would have worn during the time period that the play was set in. So it's some of their modern clothing for the time period that they might have worn during their plays. And the importance to society. It created a platform of similar interest to people in all different social classes in England. The rich and the poor became less separated because they had this common interest of going to plays. And once that curtain went down, the separation between rich and poor was gone. They were all just people there to watch and enjoy and be entertained by these plays. It was a big part of English culture and identity. Some plays tried to reproduce some ancient Greek tragedies, which led Englishmen to believe that they were carrying out the legacies of their Greek heroes. English citizens felt very proud about this type of theater because they thought that they had received a cultural gift from the Greeks. So English Renaissance theater genres, you have the history plays, which were normally about English or European history, and some examples of that were Shakespeare's Richard III and Henry V. And then you have tragedy plays, which stem from Greek tragedies. And some examples of that are Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus and the Jew of Malta. Then you have comedy plays, especially city comedies, so comedy that people who lived in the big cities like London would have found funny or comical. So examples of that are Thomas Decker's The Shoemaker's Holiday and Thomas Middleton's A Chaste Maid in Cheapside. And these plays are also influenced by older genres of plays such as the morality plays. So some well-known examples of English Renaissance theater plays were from William Shakespeare, and some of his well-known comedies were Midsummer Night's Dream, Much Ado About Nothing, and Twelfth Night. His famous history plays were King John, Pericles, Henry IV, Part 1 and Part 2, and his tragedies were Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, and Hamlet, and many more others by William Shakespeare. So this is my works cited page for my theater presentation, and for my performance part of the project, I chose a monologue from The Taming of the Shrew, which is a play written by William Shakespeare and is one of his comedies. It is from the end of the play when the main character, Katrine, is talking about how a woman should react and respond to her husband. So, here we go. Fie, fie, unknit that threatening, unkind brow, and dart not scornful glances from those eyes. To wound thy lord, thy king, thy governor, it blots thy beauty as frosts do bite the meads, confounds thy fame as whirlwinds shake thy buds, and in no sense is meet or amiable. A woman moved is like a fountain troubled, muddy, ill-seeming, thick, barefoot of beauty. And while it is so, none so dry or thirsty will deign to sip or touch one drop of it. Thy husband is thy lord, thy life, thy keeper, thy head, thy sovereign, one that cares for thee, and for thy maintenance commits his body to painful labor both by sea and by land, to watch the nights and the storms, the day and cold, whilst thou liest warm at home, secure and safe, and craves no other tribute at thy hands, but love, fair looks, and true obedience. Too little payment for so great a debt. Such a duty as the subject owes the prince, and even a woman oweth to her husband, and when she is froward, peevish, sullen, sour, and not obedient to his honest will, what is she but a foul contending rebel, and graceless traitor to her loving lord? I'm ashamed that women are so simple, to offer war when they should kneel for peace, or seek for rule, supremacy, and sway. Why are bodies soft and weak and smooth, unapt to toil and trouble in this world, but that our soft conditions in our hearts should well agree with our external parts? Come, come, you forward unable worms, my mind is half as big as one of yours. My heart is great, my reason happily more, to bandy word for word, frown for frown, but now I see our lances are but straws. Straws are weak, our strength is weak, our weakness past compare. That seeming to be most, which we indeed least are, that veil your stomachs, for it is no boot, and place your hands below your husband's foot. In token of which duty, if he may please, my hand is ready. My hand is ready, may it do him ease. So that was my performance of English Renaissance theater from The Taming of the Shrew. And from this, my reflection on this project is I really enjoyed this project because English Renaissance theater is theater that we come into contact to a lot during this day and age. I mean, I've studied Shakespeare in multiple different classes, including English, history class. And so it's very interesting to be able to learn more and see how it's influenced theater nowadays. And also, I really enjoyed how I was able to research the history behind the type of theater before I had to perform the theater piece, because it helped me to be able to understand more about the piece and the context behind it. So I was better able and suited to perform the piece to the best of my ability and to best represent and exhibit the principles and the ways of acting in the English Renaissance theater plays. So that's my presentation, and thank you so much. Goodbye.